Hey, thank you everyone for coming to our art talks for teens and adults. My name is Maria. I founded the private museum tours company. We provide one-of-a-kind experience for those of you interested in the arts and culture. Today, we're traveling to one of our favorite museums, and it's the Met. It was at the Met that all of us met here, and we want to celebrate it with you as it marks 150th anniversary. It's due to be open next week. So before we go around and introduce the presenters, we want to make sure you're part of the experience. We want your participation by using the chat box. So we're going to do a quick screen share before we present the presenters. And also Naomi, one of our art family here on our Zoom meeting. So here we go. So again, 150th birthday celebration. How do you use the chat box? Last time we had some questions about that. If you're on your computer screen, there's a chat box feature right here on your right-hand side. I hope you could see my mouse moving. It is there. You could leave us any comments or questions. What if you're using smartphone? Right here. There is a live chat feature right here. You would have to click on that to leave us any comments or chat conversations to have. Okay, so now you know how to go ahead and correspond with us on YouTube. You want to start that with you now, and that is quick polling. How often do you visit museums? If you could write down either A, once a month, B, 3 times a year, C, only during a school holiday, D, special exhibits only. Of course, in my case, it's almost every day. But I don't know how it is for you. Yasmine, how often do you visit museums?
Before COVID, it'd be about 3 times a month, 2 or 3 times a month. Yeah.
That's pretty good. What about you, Grace?
Well, I live kind of far, so I would say like once a month.
Once a month? And Alex?
Every time I had a class with you, so a few times a month.
You're probably, yes, I would say you're the most, yeah, out of 3 of you. And Naomi?
2 or 3 times a month.
A month, okay, 2 or 3 times a month. That's a lot. And we're so lucky we live in New York area, tri-state area. We could take advantage of all of these things, right? Okay, so next is you're going to meet the presenters. Grace, Alex, and Yasmine. That's the order we're going to introduce ourselves. So, Grace, would you like to begin?
Yes, sure. Okay. Hi, my name is Grace. I'll be a rising sophomore at Northwestern University. I'm studying economics and minoring in art history. And my favorite exhibit at the Met is the Egyptian wing.
That's my favorite too. Okay, we're gonna go to Alex.
Hi, I'm Alex. I'm going to Indian Mountain School next year in Connecticut, and my favorite exhibit is probably the Temple of Dandor.
Hi, my name is Yasmine. I'm a rising senior at Stuyvesant High School in New York City, and my favorite exhibit is probably the Damascus Room. Yeah.
By the way, if you're wondering where that is, that's on the 2nd floor, Art of Arab Land, also known as Islamic Art Gallery. Okay, so we're gonna go back to screen share because I think Grace, you would have better presentation for the Met than I do, but I just wanted to share with everyone the Met facade, and here's the banner, Met's 150th anniversary, and when it was closed. I don't know when this photo was taken, but okay, so I'm going to stop screen sharing. So Grace, we're gonna have you share your portion of the presentation.
Okay, let me get this ready. Share screen. Okay.
Oh, Rhoda has joined us as well.
Okay, so just a quick backstory on the Met. It was originally it was originally in these buildings, as you can see, far different from where we are today. It has expanded significantly. So the New York State Legislature granted the Metropolitan Museum of Art as an incorporation on April 13th, 1870, and it was actually first opened on February 20th, 1872. And the whole purpose of creating a museum in such a great city was to not only be a place to showcase art, but to further encourage the education of it. So for instance, there were these programs I ran called the Metropolitan Museum of the education department, and it really was training people in art, and it also wanted the museum to succeed as almost like a library. So it really sought to educate New Yorkers, and the original facade is clearly very different. So then there are some notable events that have occurred, some very special visitors, and I wanted to start with none other than Dwight D. Eisenhower. So basically, he visited on April 2nd, 1946, and it was because during World War II, he was able to be one of these people that kind of gathered so much art and work for the museum. And he basically was given this honorary fellow award, and there's him and his wife Mamie, and there were over 10,000 people that wanted to attend, and it was described as people were just crowding in, which this is just so crazy to think because right now there's COVID, but just imagining 10,000 people at the Met right now, all trying to get a glimpse of Eisenhower's quite spectacular. And then I wanted to mention, so none other than the Met Gala, which I think we're all very familiar with right now. So here we have Jackie Kennedy, who is sort of this American style icon. And she had been an avid participator in this event every year. And actually, up until 1971, the Met Gala was hosted at the Waldorf Astoria, but then it was moved over. So then we see Jackie again, we see Naomi Campbell in 1990, and we see Diana in the 90s. So the Met has been a well-known place for many people, not only just visitors, but also celebrities frequent the museum. And then I wanted to transition. So this is today. And as we see, the Met Gala is one of the top events of the year, if not the event. And in 1999, Anna Wintour kind of took over and made this a very A-list celebrity place. So as we can see, they go very over the top. The whole purpose is to raise money for the Costume Institute, which is not which is kind of financially independent from the museum. So they are in charge of raising their own funds. So every year they host this wonderful gala, and it is just marvelous. So yeah.
It really is. Thank you for that. But also there's that documentary, right? There's a movie.
Yes, the first Monday in May.
That's right. And everyone was looking so forward to it until they're going to postpone to next year, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that presentation. More reason for those of you who's watching us on YouTube, make a visit to New York City. Rhoda, thank you for joining us. Okay. Rhoda's our art family member here joining on the Zoom. All right, we're gonna go back to the screen share again. And like I said, please leave us any questions or comments using the chat box feature on YouTube. Thank you. Now, our next presenter will be Alex. As you could imagine, there are many art collection, over 2 million works of art. When the Met reopens again next week, I am told only 3 galleries will be open, and one of the galleries will be exhibitions of 150th celebration. So all 3 presenters have chosen artwork from that particular gallery. And Alex, your chosen work happens to be right here from Nepal.
Yes. Okay. So when I was searching on the website, the first thing that really jumped out at me was how the statue looked like it was alive and all of the textures that was on it. And here you can clearly see Krishna fighting a 7-headed snake king. Although it's not moving, the amount of action depicts a full story. And I also noticed how her hair is a totally different color from the rest of the portrait and how everything just blends together so nicely, and all the detail and different ways that the statue could have been made.
I agree. And speaking of how it's made, look at this technique. This is a French technique called repoussé, and it's how you hammer it in to create that line. And you work from the backward to the front, so it creates that pop out three-dimensional look here. But I love that, Alex, you've chosen because you first reacted to the movement of the sculpture, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And the next one is somewhat different, or should I say similar?
Okay, so this is a European mirror with Apollo's head on the top of it. I first thought it was Medusa, but then I looked into it more and it turned out it wasn't. This mirror belonged to King Louis XIV, who was also known as the Sun King, even though Apollo is known as the god of the sun. And it's divine, and mainly stereotypically only the rulers and emperors and important people have it. A tradition that follows into the mirror and if you look into the mirror and you have Apollo stare back at you, which is a symbol of power. And King Louis really liked this. And if you zoom down to the bottom, you can see there's candles, which symbolize fire and light, the sun also. So he also liked having that description of power. And yeah, and the candle to show that his image is made of light.
Right, and also here's the god of Apollo, right? Yasmine, I'm just gonna randomly pick you. What do you think about that concept, using this candelabra, candle holder, to project yourself looking into the mirror?
I think Louis XIV, I know she was talking about how this is a tradition that a lot of rulers do. And yeah, there's this kind of divine attribution to any type of ruler, and that gives them power, at least among their populations. But like Louis XIV didn't such an extreme way. Like if you look at Versailles, all of that is just filled with symbolism, and that like sun god idea is it just infiltrates every aspect of his life, even when he's just looking into the mirror. And I think that that's something very interesting that people like rulers do to kind of legitimize their rule. But as we know, Louis XIV used that not just to legitimize, but to often abuse his power as well. And so there's kind of this balance that's struck.
Okay, anybody else want to say anything? Okay, then we're gonna actually stop sharing because we're gonna bounce back to Grace for her 2 chosen works of art from that particular exhibition of 150th celebration at the Met.
Okay, let me get this up.
And again, I'm asking you, audience who's watching us, joining us on YouTube, please participate with us. Let us know for any question, comments using the chat box feature.
Okay, so for my first piece, I chose a celebratory scene depicting the birthday party of a Tang Dynasty general, Guo Ziyi. And this was actually completed in the 17th century. And that's because not much of Tang Dynasty art is still available today, and it just hasn't survived. And what really drew me to this piece was the vibrant colors and the richness of just, I think it adds a sense of livelihood to the painting, and that was kind of a main characteristic of Tang Dynasty. And that was such a golden age in China because they were so accepting of all religions, and it was just a time for art to prosper and intellectual exploration to prosper. So what really drew me was, well, what I really noticed was that if you look at all the figures in the painting, they're just all gravitating towards the center where the general is seated, and I found that so interesting. It was just the movement of the piece that I really enjoyed, and I really enjoyed the colors of the pagodas. For instance, we see a green one on the left. Oh, sorry. We see green one on the left over here, and then we see a blue one all the way towards the far left, and we see yellow. I just really enjoyed these colors. And this is actually so marvelous to think about. It is actually on a set of 12 hanging scrolls. So it's silk embroidery on satin. And I know that we cannot see this in the museum right now, but just standing in front of it, I think the glory of it would be quite um like shocking almost. Like I feel like it would be something that's so beautiful to look at in person. Yes, and I wanted to zoom in. So here's the general, and then surrounded by dozens of, so these would be family members or people just crowding in to wish him happy birthday. So I found that quite beautiful. And here's a close zoom. As you can see, he's adorned in these gorgeous robes. You can see that they feature elements of gold, and I just really enjoyed this.
And I also think about the color, where did the colors come from? Thinking about the natural resources they might have used, like the green came from a rock, malachite, which has copper in it. Blue was extremely expensive.
Yes.
Minecraft game has one of these. We wore for beautiful, beautiful, intense blue color rock called the lapis lazuli, and you would have to crush them to make them into pigments, which are powder form of the paint. So I see all of those elements here in this particular close-up of this intimate setting.
Yes, and I also wanted to add that back in the Tang Dynasty, there was no emphasis on artists to display their artistic ability through painting. There was really an emphasis on realism. So artists were focused on displaying the truth and displaying the scene as is rather than adding very ornamental like designs or just it was very focused on realism. And actually when I look at this, I think of the time I visited the Forbidden City in China, and I think like the architecture of the buildings and the pagodas is really reminiscent of that.
I think that you're right in that like there's more of this commitment to like just depiction as there is any type of ornamentation, but it is worth saying that like it's not completely accurate, at least if you think about the way that the humans look, and also the plane that it exists on. And so there's this but like you're right, if you zoom into like the buildings or even the nature, the trees themselves, they're extremely intricate. And so that's what's really funny about that dynamic, like where it's really specific and then also where it's not.
Yes, so like just looking at this, if you look closely at the pagoda, let me see if I can zoom, sorry. You can see there's almost these designs within, if you look in the blue, it's surrounded by the blue outline. If you look inside, like there's such an attention to detail to put a pattern in there. I thought was very interesting. And then if you look at the trees on the leaves, you can see every stroke, which I thought was very beautiful.
I'm also thinking when you said those detail work of the windows, thinking about the Esther Garden, Chinese garden at the Met. They have those beautifully carved window where it's see-through, right? You could
Yes.
almost grab it and touch it. And those were all individually hand carved. So I'm thinking about all the meticulously handcrafted work that they've honored and worked with various different artisans from the Ming Dynasty. That garden is also Ming Dynasty period. And this artist is from the Ming Dynasty period, 17th century, you said, correct?
Yes, but it's an anonymous right now, but we know the time it was completed. I also wanted to add that, so this particular general, Guo Ziyi, so his birthday has become a metaphor for celebration. So for instance, people would paint this birthday scene, including him in it, and they would give it as gifts to people because it was regarded to be a celebration of a happy moment. So he kind of became an icon for celebration.
Who wouldn't like to celebrate and have a party?
Yes.
That's for sure. But something about this one also, it looks flat to me, very flat, but it comes lively through all these detailed drawings and images.
Yes. Okay, so I'll move on to my next piece. My next piece is from the circa 1870, and this depicts Niagara Falls. And similar to my last piece, I thought the commitment to realism in a way was so beautiful. So for instance, if you look, well, first I would like to mention, if you think about where you're standing when you view the painting or where the artist stood, Frederick Church, you're like almost in the water, which I found very interesting. So I found that to be such a unique perspective because by looking up, you kind of get to see the magnificent beauty of Niagara Falls. You get to take it in from the lowest point. So he uses colors with light blues, and then you see the seafoam green, and I just found this to be so realistic at a time where back in the 1800s, it wasn't so practical for everyone to go travel to go see Niagara Falls. So when this painting was first completed, it was immediately set up in a gallery, a one painting gallery, and people would pay 25 cents, and there were hundreds of thousands of people that had gone to go visit this. And what I found so interesting was the painting's actually 7 feet wide. So if we were actually viewing this in a museum right now, it would be a panoramic experience. And it was so interesting that people actually took binoculars to go and look here. So it was really bringing people to a place back in a time when travel wasn't so convenient for everyone. So in a way, this piece of art was able to transport the viewer to a whole nother world. And what was so interesting about Niagara Falls at the time was back then, a lot of art and a lot of just, there was just so much focus on Europe and the beauties of Europe. For instance, we had like Versailles in Europe, all these like beautiful places. And America didn't really have that much attention. So Niagara Falls was kind of, it was our crown jewel at the time. So for someone to be able to depict this really just brought America to its to a degree of glory. And as you can see, there's a tower over here. It's the attention to detail is just so spectacular. And then,
can I add something? I mean, as you're talking about it, I want to be there right now.
yeah,
You know, the mist. I mean, I just remember I went there when I was so young. And I remember I hated the feeling of getting wet and water splashing all over me because I was on a boat and looking down up. I mean, I wonder, did any one of you who's watching us on YouTube, have you experienced this? Have you visited this site? I think Rhoda, you might have been nodding somewhat. Maybe you have, or maybe not. I cannot hear you because you're muted, but you could unmute yourself and share if you want to. Alex, have you been? No, she's nodding no. Okay, so yes, Rhoda, you wanted to share something with us?
No, I was very close to the Niagara Falls at one time. I went to a place, Chautauqua, which is a very special place, but I never got to the falls. So that's still something I can do in the future, hopefully.
Okay, Naomi, have you? Yes, you have. You nodded yes.
Yes, it's beautiful. And I liked getting the feeling of the mist.
Oh, so you enjoyed the wet experience.
I did. I like being out in nature. And this makes you feel nature. You know, I just want to mention, comparing this painting to the Chinese painting, they're both, this is quite realistic and precise, and it has illusionistic space. But the Chinese painting is quite abstract if you look at it. And I like the views we saw of the squares, the shapes, the color, very real, but flat, as you said, but quite abstract and modern.
That is
Yes,
so interesting, Grace. What do you think about that? Abstract versus realistic. Naomi thought Chinese painting looked more abstract.
I mean, I think the realistic aspect of this painting is that it's three-dimensional, almost four-dimensional if you splash some water in your face. It's almost four-dimensional. But I think the reason why I really think for a two-dimensional piece, I think the Chinese painting is quite realistic as it can get. I mean, how would I say? Like, I don't think they aim to paint in a 3D manner, but I think it's very good for a two-dimensional concept, if that makes any sense.
Great selection.
I think Yasmine wants to say something.
Oh yeah, I just think it's also worth noting that all paintings are two-dimensional, and so
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. That's
it's just a matter of which one can create that illusion better of space versus non-space.
Yeah, all paintings are, except for sculptures.
Yeah, that's true, but like 100%. Yeah, no, for sure.
No, I agree. No, what am I saying? But no,
Somebody
I think
the security guards at the Met to like throw water at Grace's face when she's looking at it.
then it's four-dimensional.
Yeah, then it becomes four-dimensional, exactly.
No, I'm saying that goes to say though, I think this piece is like three-dimensional.
Yeah,
But-
no, it's so surreal. Like or at least it feels very visceral. Sorry.
Yeah, I wanted to add this part too. So this is on the right side, and I thought the mist is so beautiful.
Okay. Wait, hold on. Who has the phone ringing in the back?
Sorry, it's my. Sorry, that was weird.
Is it Yasmine? Okay.
Yeah.
Put the microphone on. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so yeah, bringing back to the dimensions. I really liked. Do you see this piece? I thought this one really felt like water in your face. So I thought that was quite interesting. I really enjoyed the right portion of the painting too.
I do too. What year did you say this was painted?
So people are disagreeing between 1856 and 1857, but it's around that time.
Hmm.
And it's on the Canadian side. It was painted on. So.
But it's right during that like smack dab middle of American Romanticism. Like if you think about what gave glory back to American art, this exactly the type of hyper-realism that you're describing that makes you feel like you're in the scene. That's what American Romanticism aimed to do. It looked for glory, like you were saying, within nature. And in that way, like 100%, it transcends all dimensions at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I'll bounce back to you. Let me stop screen sharing.
Thank you, Grace. That was great.
Thank you.
Yeah, just that experience of traveling, west and east and comparing two different paintings that are flat, but it gives the illusion of 3D, in your case, maybe four-dimensional.
I mean, this kind of reminds me of that room in the American wing of Versailles. When you walk into the little house, the original museum.
Yes.
And they have that room where it's a circle. And then you look around and all around you is Versailles. And I think that reminds me of that experience. It's almost like you're being transported to somewhere that you've never been before.
I agree. And that's the beauty of the museum, right? It takes you there. You don't have to get on a plane for, 14 hours, 16 hours to go to China.
Yeah.
You could just go to the second floor and here you are in China. Okay. So now our last presenter will be Yasmine. And Yasmine's going to take us not from the ancient civilization, but all the way to
the modern era. Vaguely, yeah. No, perfect. Just
hold on. I have to find our image. And all of a sudden it got closed. Okay. And I'll get that set up here. Here it is.
Okay, perfect. Speaking of dimensions, this very three-dimensional work of art, Yeah, immediate impressions, things you've noticed, things that kind of stand out.
You know, it's very like three-dimensional.
It is. It is.
Naomi agrees. She says yes, yes.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
Naomi, you were trying to say something?
That's what I was saying. You can walk around it like a sculpture. You know, it has 3 dimensions, not just the illusion of space.
Yeah, 100%. Also, just in terms, like, what do we notice about the color? Because now we're talking about the form, but the color.
It's very vibrant.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think I really feel like it includes the colors from almost an entire spectrum. Like it doesn't really leave any colors out.
Yeah, it's all inclusive colors. But this, yeah, 100%. This is Carousel State, made in 1968 by Black artist Sam Gillum, who we'll see in the next image. Yes, perfect. The Carousel State, the one that we just showed previously, kind of commits to exploring material and also color possibilities of just traditional painting. So Gillum himself, this is kind of the staple of his art career. He was born in Tupelo, Mississippi, and is considered one of the greatest innovators of post-war American painting, post-World War II American painting. He, along with many other painters in the 1960s, kind of tried to make this commitment to less of the hyperrealism that you saw in Grace's painting and more to the abstract representation of everyday. But him specifically, along with a couple other painters, were just more committed to works that elaborated upon, disrupted, interrogated, scrutinized, all the words, the ethos of color, how it exists, how we represent it, how we interact with it. And he, along with the other painters, called themselves the Washington Color School, which is the visual art movement in the 60s in Washington, D.C., that was mainly concerned with color field painting and forms of non-objective, non-representational art that were used to explore these solid areas of paint. So if we can go to the next one. Yes. So here we have a painting by another kind of alum of the Washington Color School, Alma Thomas, who also makes this commitment to color, as Grace mentioned about Carousel State. But what do you think the distinction is here?
Well, it's flat.
This one's 2-dimensional.
Yep, yeah, 100%. But like also just, I guess it's kind of more organized.
Yes, I agree.
I said controlled. Controlled. The other was more splashy.
Yeah.
More expressive.
I feel like there isn't as much like mixing of color in this one compared to the other one. It's just very like, this is the color's designated area and this is where it sticks.
Yeah. There's less of this like idea of spontaneity or whatever. Like it's less of this spontaneous kind of exploration of color and more just this very like specific one. Now, Alma Thomas was also a very big figure in this the Washington Color School, but also she was distinct from Sam Gillum, as was everyone else, because Sam Gillum like it contrasted with his kind of peers in that, yes, they all made this commitment to color. Yes, the movement is very much impactful on the way that we viewed Washington as kind of an artistic capital, but also the way that we engage with color. And yes, they all committed to this exploration, but Sam Gillum kind of differs because he takes what he learns from the color school and he expands upon those ideas. And for his commentary, his ingenuity, he's seen as one of the great successes of the Washington Color School movement and been exhibited in a number of very, very famous galleries and museums, one of which being the Met. This next painting that we're going to see, Lia's Renoir, is also another one of Sam Gillam's. Was also exhibited in the Metropolitan Museum of Art, but not being displayed currently. This, unlike his other one, is acrylic on canvas with collage sections. But this, like the other one, again, this commitment to color, this exploration, and kind of like Naomi was saying, it's more spontaneous. Like you wouldn't be able to tell. I mean, did any of you ever just when you were young pick up a bunch of markers and just scribble on the page and just whatever came up with that's what your mom would hang on the refrigerator?
Yeah, except my mom didn't hang it up on the refrigerator.
Aw.
Alex, what about your mom?
No, our refrigerator wasn't magnetic.
Did you like have it though, or did you just throw it out?
I'm pretty sure my mom kept them after I threw them in the trash.
Oh.
I don't even think I took mine home. Left it. Cool.
But what we don't realize is that you kind of work doing the same exploration that Gillam was doing. Like it's very similarly. It's again this spontaneous, someone just giving you a bunch of colors and you kind of exploring it. Of course, this is one of Gillam's work. Unlike the other, it is two-dimensional, but it does have a certain. It resembles his other painting, and you can see from how here he kind of built upon these ideas and developed drape paintings. Granted, this painting came about 4 years after drape paintings, but drape paintings were very much what established Gillam as an innovator and very much the staple of his career, and that's what we'll see in the next image. His drape paintings was, if Maria, you can go to the next image. Yeah, perfect. His drape paintings were the way that he were the way that he kind of separated from the oppressive flatness of the painting, like just regular two-dimensional paintings. Instead, through a series of breakthroughs and after much discovery, he found a way to kind of expand upon the tenets of the Washington Color School, as well as those of abstract expressionism, which as a post-World War II movement was very much prevalent during Gillam's time. If we can go to the next one. Perfect. Okay. Some of you may be familiar with this painting. It's not a pop quiz, but can anyone maybe give us a little information as to which one this is?
Pollock.
Yeah.
What did Naomi say?
She said Pollock.
Jackson Pollock.
Yes, for sure. One of the big names in contemporary art, also just in terms of Western art history. Jackson Pollock right there with the cigarette in his hand, the one eye open. Yeah, he was, you can kind of see how his art, Sam Gillam's art kind of resembles Jackson Pollock's, but abstract expressionism was just a term applied to forms of abstract art that kind of was characterized by gestural brushstrokes, mark making, spontaneity. There was no kind of structure to it. It kind of just happened in the moment. And it gave the painting this kind of temporal feeling without the permanence of just trying to depict one scene within one painting. With these massive bursts of color, you can kind of see how the Washington Color School kind of devoted their efforts to a different aspect of abstract expressionism. But again, the impact and kind of influence is still there. Abstract expressionism was spearheaded by artists like Jackson Pollock, and it's an artist that's safe to say Gillam's work somewhat resembles, but again, Gillam is distinct in the way he expands upon these ideas. So if we want to look to the next image, perfect. Gillam pursued a way to take these abstract representations and manifest them physically through the drape paintings. He was it was inspired by the improv of both the abstract expressionist period, but also just the improv of jazz, which was very much an influence on his artistic style. I don't know, do any of you listen to jazz?
I do.
You do? Your favorite jazz artist, Maria?
Yeah, Charlie Parker. There are so many, but I just love their unpredictable notes, you know?
Mm-hmm.
What about you, Naomi? You said you listen to jazz. What is it about jazz you like?
It's very related to abstract expressions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because Jackson Pollock also listened to jazz when he was creating this drip-like paintings.
Yeah. Romar Bearden.
Romar Bearden.
About jazz, you know.
Mm-hmm. Harlem Renaissance artist. Yes, that is true.
Mm-hmm. And it was through kind of the improv that he kind of derived from jazz that he was able to work with the drape paintings, which after, as you can see, he kind of suspended them on the wall as well as the ceilings across stretchless lengths of these canvases. And then he would transform his medium while he transformed the content of the art himself, as in he relied on the drape to kind of inform the way he worked around exploring color, exploring content. Of course, this didn't just spur an aesthetic revolution. If we can go to the next slide. There was another revolution that was happening during this time. Alex, I don't mean to pop quiz you, but have you been learning about this in U.S. history?
Not really, but vaguely.
Okay, so can anyone identify the image here?
The civil rights movement.
Mm-hmm. And as we know, it was kind of this explosive revolution that had been building up for many centuries to come. In this kind of this way that a whole group of people tried to hold their government and society accountable. And in this revolution, most of which was kind of concentrated in Washington, D.C., kind of the capital of the United States. Again, which I'll reiterate, the same Washington, D.C., in which the Washington Color School movement took place. And so Sam Gillam, as a Black artist, clearly had some type of relation. Like, there was very much this call to action, both for him aesthetically, but also socially. And but there was still some pressure for him. It was from both his Black peers as well as his white ones. There were many people that kind of questioned why Gillam committed to exploring color when there was a whole group of experiences that haven't been represented and a chance to explore in art, namely the African American experience. And a lot of artists at that time a lot of Black artists particularly were committed to doing that. If we think of Jacob Lawrence, for example, who also has his own exhibition at the Met right now. He was one of the few African American artists that chose to paint works with no recognition or kind of acknowledgement of the Black experience. There were some paintings that kind of changed that up. For one, his drape painting of April 4th, the day that Martin Luther King Jr. got assassinated, in which the color, but the same form is there. The commitment to color, the commitment to testing out form. Gillam did not give up his commitment to abstraction despite the pressure and call from everyone else. And for that, he's forever remembered for his commitment to his art as well as his history. He, in kind of rejecting the expectations that people have set for him, allowed him to kind of pave the way for a whole new lane of a way that we can kind of interact with art. And also he paved the way for Black artists. He was the first African-American artist to represent the US at the Venice Biennial in 1972. If for those of you who are not familiar with the Venice Biennial, it is the major art exhibition in Venice, in which only the major artists end up going. And then he was also the recipient of the Presidential Medal of Arts in 2015. I think we have an image of that there. So yeah, so if we want to go back to Gillam now, yes. So Gillam, despite the fact that like he's had this really impressive career behind him, he's still working. He hasn't been forced to retire by any means. At like 84, 85, 86, he's still kicking, he's still creating art, and he's still testifying to the experiences of Black artists everywhere. And a lot of art critics have been saying for these years to be some of his best ones. But if you look at him and his kind of canon of work, he's always been excellent. So if we want to go back to the image of the Met, I think one thing we can open for discussion is that the Met now, which kind of, like Maria was saying, takes you different places and takes you to many different places and many different, and just like this, the limit of the building, because of its very diverse collection, it wasn't always as kind of inclusive as it is now. And there was less of a commitment to just speaking to experience and more just catering to a specific one. If you look at the history of museums just in New York City, a lot of them kind of erupted in response to the Met's rejection of certain types of art, American art, modern art. And very much Sam Gillam is a person that 150 years ago, he would not have necessarily been exhibited and kind of celebrated in this type of institution. But I think we can look back at that history and just kind of be a bit uncomfortable in it for sure, but also be impressed by the path that the Met has taken in the past 150 years, because it's come so far and it's a very impressive museum. And so we can take it in stride, but also just kind of revere at it. Yeah.
Thank you, Yasmine. That was really enlightening. I mean, thank you, Grace, and thank you, Alex, all of you. But again, those of you who just joined or who joined 10 minutes ago and you're not sure about how to use the chat feature, here's another instruction. It's on your right if you're using a desktop, computer, or laptop. If you're using a smartphone, here it is. We highlighted in circle here for you, live chat. This is where you want to click and then chat with us, because we had a polling earlier asking all of you, how often do you visit museums? We want to know. Once a month, 3 times a year, only school holidays, or special exhibits like Jacob Lawrence that Yasmine was talking about? So please, we're going to give you a few more seconds for you to answer A, B, C, or D, please. And so you could see from our presenters, the collections are very vast, from ancient civilization all the way to modern, and they're still collecting, they're still growing. So I think it's something to think about when you do go visit, if you're especially in tri-state area. One last polling we want to ask you. When is a good time to join us for a live event like this? Hey, weekends, in the mornings, afternoon, or in the evenings. When is best for you? We want to hear from you. Or is weekdays even a possibility for you? Let us know, again, using the chat box features. Okay, while you're thinking about it, giving some thoughts, we're gonna stop screen sharing and then just, I don't know, give you guys some time to digest, to think about what we love about the Met, since museums and other cultural institutions are reopening starting next week, and more so after the Labor Day weekend. Anything, any questions or any comments? Because I know there's slight delay getting our messages on YouTube, even if it's live web stream right now. So, or any questions, Naomi, you might have, or Rhoda, this will be a good time to share. Or Grace, Alex, anyone. I know for one, I'm anxious to go visit the rooftop.
Yeah, I thought that the three presenters were fabulous. I'm very excited to see the exhibit. They selected great variety. It was amazing. Accolades. And thank you, Maria.
No, thank you. I mean, we're all part of the art family, especially the Met that we adore and we love. So we get to share with wider, bigger audiences, whoever's on YouTube right now.
Right. I'm an art teacher and painter, and I was so interested and informed by these presenters. Thank you.
Thank you. Grace?
This was very informative, yes.
Anything? You're going to miss us when you go to Chicago?
Yeah, I will. Yeah, it's going to be different with COVID.
Yes, it is. But they do have great institution, Chicago Art Institute.
Yes, I can't wait to go.
Yeah, they have incredible impressionist collection there. So that is something I envy you, girl. Okay. And I'm just checking on anybody's comments or chat box. We're not seeing any here, so it's okay. We have more of a listener audience on YouTube. That is a-okay. Please check out the link that I've attached. Jacob Lawrence. Otherwise, yeah, we want to keep these conversations going. So if you want to join us, check us out on Instagram. Our username is Private Museum Tours. And yeah, leave us any comments. You don't have to do it today. You could do it any other time since it's going to be on YouTube moving forward. Thank you, Naomi. You're letting us know on the chat box on Zoom. Okay, wonderful. Weekdays, anytime, 24/7. Sure. Thank you, Naomi. Okay, so on that note, thank you everybody for joining. We're going to end our live session here. So until next time, take care. Bye everyone.
Bye.